Hi, my name is Carla. We recently recorded a webinar about resume tips and thought it would be great to follow up with some LinkedIn tips, kind of to tie everything together and help you out with your professional package of documents. Having a little bit of technical challenge this evening, toggling back and forth between Zoom and this PowerPoint. So please bear with me if we have a couple glitches along the way, but hopefully we can prioritize just getting this information out to you over my technical capabilities. So here we go. As I had mentioned in our resume webinar, we have been the trusted leader in HR strategy and solutions since 1982. We're very proud to be a well-established leader in the New England area and throughout the country for HR placement and HR solutions. Definitely hoping that this webinar will guide you through a lot of the strategy behind setting up an effective LinkedIn profile, but anything that you need extra help with, keep in mind that we're always available and happy to help. So there's a couple parts to LinkedIn guidance. One of them is certainly the mechanics and the little details behind the scenes when it comes to setting up a LinkedIn profile. I'll touch on a couple of those today, but for the most part, I have found, and I think you'll find, that the help option in LinkedIn is very comprehensive and robust. So keep that in mind as a place to go if you need help in just kind of understanding how the LinkedIn profile itself is set up and works. We're going to talk more about the content that's visible to the outside world within your LinkedIn profile. So let's get started. So the LinkedIn profile sections I'll go over today are your opening section, which is the very top of the profile. Talk about the experience section, your education section, other sections that may be optional, and then there's a skills and endorsements for those skills section at the bottom of the profile, and lastly, the recommendations. So starting off with the opening section to a LinkedIn profile, if you look at the top of your LinkedIn profile, you'll see a photo of yourself if you've loaded one where it says me with a drop-down arrow, and that'll get you to your settings and privacy. Again, won't cover too much of that today, but it's worth your time to look through those settings and privacy options. You will find things that will allow you to either notify or not notify your network if you've made changes to your profile. You can actually set your profile so that individuals do or do not see that you have viewed their profile. So there's a lot of interesting settings, and you may even vary those settings depending on whether you're in networking mode or job search mode. So take a look through those, and again, we're here if you have any questions about the pros and cons to the different settings. There's also a place right at the top bar of the profile to add a new section. So LinkedIn has some preset options, and then you can always add additional sections to your profile depending on what your situation is. Those additional sections might include awards or certificates or trainings and other areas like that. So we'll get a little bit more into that later. We'll talk about your background design and your having a professional photo. Those are really important pieces to an effective LinkedIn profile. It kind of gives it a more polished look and really ensures that nothing is left to chance, nothing is missing. So take the time to search on the internet for something that you feel is a professional yet just kind of general good background design to back up your professional photo. Make sure that your full name and location and contact info are all there. That's something important so that as recruiters or others who want to network with you are out there looking at profiles, they can really be sure that they can put a name to a face. I had kind of mentioned contact info briefly, and I'll back up for a second. There's an option to add your contact info behind the scenes on your profile. So it's not necessarily displayed for the whole world to see, but if you choose to include an email address or a phone number, certain connections within your network will be able to reach you if you've added that to your profile. So the tagline and headline are actually very important pieces to your LinkedIn profile. They are one and the same. And it's important to think of a tagline or a headline that's a little bit more strategic than just simply listing your job title. If you are not in job search mode and you're comfortable with your job title effectively describing and getting to the heart of, what your main function is and what you do, then it's probably fine to simply list your job title there. If, however, you want to choose to add some descriptive words like strategic, detail-oriented, if you want to add the word leader, if you are in job search mode and you're open to both manager level and director level jobs, you may not want to put one title or the other because that could be limiting. So keep that in mind. Take some time to browse LinkedIn, look at some other profiles of maybe not necessarily direct competitors, but individuals who might be in a similar role in a different geographic location, just to kind of get some ideas of what's out there and how different people have chosen to use their tagline or their headline. And then there's also in the opening section an option to indicate to recruiters or to your whole network that you are looking. So this is a really nice option. If you're not in job search mode, you don't really need to worry about this. But as you're filling in your top section of your profile, you will see this option available. If you're actively in job search mode because you've been laid off or you're not currently employed, then certainly we would recommend letting your entire network know. And this section allows you to fill in what types of roles you're interested in and other details that pertain to the jobs that you're open to. If you want to keep your job search somewhat confidential, you can still fill this section in, but elect to only have it be seen by recruiters from organizations that are not within your own organization and might be out viewing your profile. So the About section follows your opening section of your profile. It really should be somewhat aligned with your resume summary. If you have not yet had a chance to view our resume webinar, you might want to do that as well. But the summary is something that kind of leverages a mix of your professional competencies and also your professional traits. So for example, if you're someone in the comp space and you're working within the HR umbrella but in compensation, you might want to specify the areas of compensation you've worked in, whether it's executive comp, broad-based comp, and then combine that with maybe a reference to the size organizations you've typically worked with, whether or not you've rolled out new comp programs, and then also include some descriptive words, whether it's analytical, detail-oriented, progressive. Think about words that might describe you, combine those with some of those core competency type terms that really describe the work that you've done or the work you're targeting to do, and try to keep your About section to a paragraph of no more than 4 or 5 lines. And then certainly sometimes you can add a subsection below your paragraph. So if you have certain specialties you want to highlight, you could do a bulleted list of specialties below your paragraph section, or career highlights. If you've had some really heavy hitter type accomplishments, that could be a subsection as well. Or perhaps a background story. It's sometimes interesting to hear about a candidate's passion and where that grew from. And it's possible that it might have started, in the earlier days when you were a child or a college student, or you might have a family business that, may not have been appropriate or may not have had the space to share in your resume. And as long as it's kept professional and somewhat aligned with your career path, this might be a nice place to add those types of things as well. Below the About section, you have your dashboard and activity section. And these are actually nice metrics to become familiar with and keep track of, especially if you're taking the time to update your profile and boost it based on either this webinar or other articles you've read. Then it might be interesting to keep track of maybe, even who's viewed your profile. You can, through the dashboard metrics, you can also see, where you've posted your content and who's viewed it, where you've appeared in other people's searches. And again, as I mentioned, I'm stumbling on this particular slide, but it might be interesting to notice your metrics before and after you make those profile changes to see if all of a sudden you have more views of your profile after you've boosted it with either key terms or other important information. Your activity updates will also show in this section, so you can see further information about your recent posts and comments that people made on those posts. For your experience section, this is one of the kind of sit back and relax, easiest sections of the LinkedIn profile, I feel. And the reason for that is because you can really leverage your resume experience section and basically take the content that's in your resume and keep it either similar or exactly the same for loading into your LinkedIn profile. So in some cases, and in most cases, it might be as simple as a copy and paste. In other cases, you may have a need to make some minor adjustments. Navigating LinkedIn's chronological date formatting can be a little tricky. What I mean by that is on your resume, you have the option to list out some very relevant career experience and then possibly make a separate section that has internship experience or additional experience. In the LinkedIn profile, by filling in the dates, you're kind of forced initially to lay out those experiences in the exact order that they happened in. But if you prefer to only highlight jobs that are directly related to your career path and keep the others separate, what you can do is actually create a whole separate section. So just keep that in mind as a way to kind of work around your LinkedIn chronological preset options. For your company names, make sure that you're using the exact name and locations. And the advantage of that is that the company logos will appear to the left of your organizations that you've worked for, and it makes it a really nice tool for a recruiter to click on those logos and read the about section of the companies you've worked for. Oftentimes when we're searching, we are looking for candidates who might share or be aligned with some of what our client companies are looking for in terms of industry experience, company sizes, and by us being able to click on those logos, we get that information very quickly. So if you're able to put the exact right name and location of your company, then recruiters can access that information easily and see a whole nother part of your background that you didn't necessarily need to take time to write the details for. As far as adding more content or limiting content in your LinkedIn profile, this is where it's nice to have your LinkedIn profile as a supplement to your resume. If your resume was limiting and you had a lot of space limitations to fit the most critical information, your LinkedIn profile can actually become that place where you can add additional information, possibly expand on things that you would have liked to in your resume, but you didn't have the space. By the same token, if you prefer to provide a snapshot of your career and not necessarily go back too far, it is very acceptable and appropriate to keep your background to the past approximately 10 years, as long as it's remaining very relevant to your career path and your targeted roles. Below that, you can just simply list job titles and date ranges without necessarily going into too much detail. But again, making sure that as a professional package, everything ties in fairly nicely between your resume and your LinkedIn profile, and that they are showing a similar scope of detail and a similar approach to your content. We've already talked about consistency between your resume and your LinkedIn profile. Another thing that's really important, and this goes for the resume as well, is to optimize your LinkedIn profile with keywords and key terms and phrases. Certainly want to be careful not to ever embellish or exaggerate the work that you've actually done. But if you're targeting certain jobs and you can pick up certain key terms or phrases that appear in many of the job descriptions you're targeting, then if they are aligned with what you've actually done in your work experience, it's important to try to include those matching words so that when your LinkedIn profile is showing up in a search by a recruiter, they're seeing a lot of those matches pop up. The other thing that's important to keep in mind is to really clarify your employment. One great example for this is for anyone who's out working contract or consultant roles, and those are probably more common than ever right now with a lot of layoffs having happened, and then individuals, kind of being able to continue with their work experience but in a different capacity. It's great to list not only your employer whose payroll you're on in terms of a staffing agency or a contract placement firm, but also be sure to still list the names of the companies that you're employed by. So again, a recruiter who's searching and looking at your background can see not only the firm that might have placed you, but also have a sense by naming those companies that you're actually performing the work for. Recruiters and hiring managers can have a sense of the size and industry companies you've worked for. Make sure with these jobs too that you're using those key terms like contract or temporary or consultant or part-time. If you're only interested in part-time and that's what you prefer and that's what you're doing, make sure you're using those defining type terms to describe the nature of the work that you're in at the moment. For your education section, this is one of the easiest, most straightforward parts of the LinkedIn profile. I recommend adding all of your degrees to show that hard work and progression moving between the different degrees as you went through your career. Dates are optional. And then for school names, it's treated similarly to company names where the closer you can be to an exact school name and an exact location, the better, so that recruiters and hiring managers can click on those company, and in this case, the college and university or technical trade schools, whatever the case may be, they can click on the logo and gain some information about the nature of that establishment, that educational establishment. Other sections in your LinkedIn profile, I had talked earlier about where to find them, and again, it's on that top bar. There's a nice drop-down menu where you can locate a number of other options for sections to add to your profile. And then some examples might be a certification section, an awards section, if you're someone who's published materials, if you have any patents, anything like that that you want to separate out and highlight. You can either select one of LinkedIn's preset section names or create one on your own and then just label it. Other sections that you might also opt to not pre-fill, they're pre-filled sections that you can opt to populate with some content are volunteerism, languages, and then these also can serve as an alternate place to have kind of an addition to your about section if you chose not to have a subsection up at the top of your profile. And if you're struggling with the placement of where these pieces of information go, once again, that's where we can come into play and really help you with refining and finishing off your LinkedIn profile. The skills and endorsement section on the LinkedIn profile is also a nice addition for a couple reasons. First of all, it allows candidates or any professional to add up to 50, not necessarily recommending that you take advantage and just add 50 skills for the heck of it, but make sure that you take the time to go through that list. It might actually prompt you and remind you of ideas of skills to add that you might not have thought of. It also gives you a good idea of things that might mean the same but are worded a little bit differently, and through the skills section you can select multiple variations of the same skill that are worded a little bit differently. That can also help ensure that your profile shows up when hiring managers or recruiters are searching. It's an excellent way to boost and optimize both your LinkedIn profile and your resume. And then once you've put those skills in, you can actually either receive, hopefully on a good day, receive endorsements from past and current colleagues and friends in your network. And you can certainly, if you're comfortable, reach out and ask those you've worked with to endorse you for certain skills once you've updated your profile. The recommendations section is down towards the bottom of your profile, and it's actually a great thing to keep in mind to kind of round out your profile. Make sure that you give them. A great way to maybe receive additional recommendations is to first give some. Ask some people in your network, would you like me to recommend you? Would you like me to write a brief recommendation? If you've worked on a project with someone, extend yourself and try to offer those when it makes sense to, and then hopefully your network member will reciprocate, or you can certainly ask anyone you're comfortable with and say, would you be willing to write a recommendation for me? I'd love to boost my profile and, you know, have some additional comments from others I've worked with on my areas of strength. So that's another way to approach it. Again, it's an excellent way to finish off an already strong profile, and it really can provide an advantage in a competitive market. If you are someone whose profile has popped up in a search by a recruiter or a hiring manager, and they're kind of on the fence about whether or not your background or your skill set matches the job they have open, you never know if that one extra recommendation that's been written for you could be the clincher that kind of, you know, brings your profile more to the surface for them in terms of a possible match. So every little bit makes a difference in this market. Keep your profile current. We had talked about the same thing with the resumes, and it's just as important with your LinkedIn profile. Update recent work, accomplishments, and skills as you go. Eliminate outdated information that's no longer critical or relevant. And then just keep in mind, as I had mentioned earlier, your next opportunity can be right around the corner, and any little difference in your profile can make the difference in your candidacy as well. So stay tuned for more. We're going to continue to try to put more material out. We love the connection and the interaction with our network and our candidates and our client companies. So you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and certainly on our website. All of these videos that we're in the process of recording, our webinars, and recently an interview with our founder, Clark Willmott, can all be found on the resources section of willmott.com. So we look forward to staying in touch. Take advantage of the offer to reach out to us anytime, and we hope everyone has a great summer. Thank you.